The old part of the town was made up of large Victorian townhouses, many of which had been converted into flats that continued to demand high prices despite the general economic malaise. The town's coastal location meant that its economy had relied on holiday visitors until cheap foreign holidays killed the tourist trade. Langthorne, like many similar towns, now suffered high unemployment and social decline. With the sudden demand for council housing for people not in work, the government had commissioned new build areas to put them in, or, as many people quipped, let's put all the scum together. Effingell Estate, known to the locals as Effingell on the edge of Langthorne, was a prime example of such a solution. Langthorne High Street was typical of any seaside town at the beginning of winter. With the sun down, the temperature had plunged, and people pulled their coats closer as they stood in the early evening air, scented by chip shops and diesel fumes. Two sixth-formers, Jamie Horan and Sophie Hayward, stepped out of the chippy carrying overflowing cones. Sophie threw a chip at her friend, and it bounced off his shoulder. She pointed a thumb at an elderly gent, indicating that he was the culprit. Jamie pretended to walk after him before turning round and laughing. Linking arms, they headed down the high street with a solitary seagull limping in their wake. Sophie heard Lady Gaga playing in her school bag and stopped to retrieve her phone. She tucked her long brown hair behind her ear and answered the call. "Hey, Mum, I'm just on my way to the bus stop." "No, Mum, I told you I was going to get the bus. Jamie's walking me there. He's here right now." Sophie rolled her eyes. "Yes, Mum, I'm coming straight home." "Yes, I know it's getting dark." "Fine then, I will. Yep, okay." "Okay, Mum." She ended the call, her smile returning as she looked at Jamie. He playfully bumped shoulders with Sophie. "Your Mum's worried about you." "Of course she is. She knows I'm with you." "Cheeky mare." Jamie laughed and threw a chip at her. "She always worries when it gets dark. She thinks that everyone who's out after dark is a crazy random." "Yeah, I heard that. She's not far wrong, you know, Soph. This is Langthorne." They arrived at the bus stop, pushing and shoulder-barging each other, slapping hands that tried to snatch at quickly cooling chips. They had stayed on in town after school and wandered round the shops. Catching a later bus would allow them to avoid the teenage school crowd, all vying for the back seat to the sound of a million different ringtones, all shouting. The double-decker bus was already at the stop, and they dumped their chip wrappers in a nearby bin, flashed their passes at the driver, and hurried up to the top deck. Sophie squealed as she ran to the back and threw herself onto the long seat. "Back seat! Yay!" Jamie followed more slowly. He put in a white headphone bud and sat down beside Sophie. She beamed at him again and turned to the window, wiping the condensation with her sleeve and peering out into the gloomy night. Neither of them noticed the hooded figure follow them onto the bus and up to the top deck. Keeping his head down under his hood, he peered around from under his thick eyebrows to check that he was alone, save for the two kids he had seen walk over from the chip shop. He had heard much of their conversation, seen the girl playfully punch the boy, but more to the point, he had seen the phone. He had sized up the lad and seen the white iPod headphones hanging round his neck. It was only 2 stops until the bus reached the Effingell Estate. He had about 8 minutes. The bus pulled away. No one else had come upstairs. The man sat close enough to listen to the young couple chatting. The lad had produced a copy of Auto Trader magazine. He was going to do his driving test soon, and he might get a Golf. The boy bragged about his parents footing the bill for a decent one, just a couple of years old, they said. The man felt for the knife in his jacket pocket, the rusty blade folded into the handle. It would be more than sufficient to get the job done, whether he used it or not. The girl's incessant giggling cut through him, so natural, so carefree. His thoughts turned black. "Oh, fucking change that." 4 minutes from his stop, the man rose to his feet, rocking against the metal pole when the bus slowed.